If you've ever stood in front of the mirror and noticed something strange, your weight isn't particularly high, yet your abdomen feels firm, protrudes outward, and barely responds to any weight loss effort, then you may not be dealing with ordinary fat, but a completely different type, visceral fat. And this is where many people misunderstand things from the very beginning, because they assume all fat is the same, only differing in location. In reality, visceral fat is not just fat stored deeper. It is a highly active biological tissue that behaves almost like an endocrine organ, constantly sending chemical signals that influence how your body processes energy, regulates insulin, and even controls levels of inflammation. This means your problem is not simply about eating more or less, but about how your body has been programmed to store energy. What makes visceral fat dangerous and stubborn is not merely that it is harder to burn in a simple sense, but that it sits within a unique biological transport system, the portal vein, where everything released from visceral fat is delivered directly to the liver first. Imagine this as continuously pouring fuel into your liver, even when your body doesn't need it. The result is a liver under constant overload, disrupted insulin signaling, and a body that shifts into storage mode rather than usage mode. This is exactly why many people don't eat excessively yet still see their belly grow over time, because the issue is no longer about calories, but about distorted metabolic signals. And this is where things start to get more interesting, because contrary to popular belief, visceral fat is not the kind of fat that is untouchable. In fact, it is often the most responsive type of fat when you target its specific weakness correctly. The problem is that most people have never truly activated that switch. They train too hard, too fast, or too inconsistently. They push their bodies into a high-stress state, elevate cortisol, and unintentionally send the opposite signal: hold on to fat. Then they conclude that their body is resistant to fat loss, when in reality, they are simply using the wrong strategy. If you've ever pushed yourself to exhaustion with long runs, intense HIIT sessions, or workouts that leave you gasping for air, here is a truth that might surprise you. That is not the optimal environment for reducing visceral fat. It sounds counterintuitive, but your body does not burn the most fat when you train the hardest. Instead, it burns fat most efficiently when it operates in a state where the metabolic system can function steadily without being pushed into emergency mode. And that state has a very simple name: Zone 2. Zone 2 is not a complicated concept, nor is it reserved for athletes or those with heart rate monitors. It is simply a level of activity you can sustain for a long period without feeling exhausted. You can still talk, but not sing. You breathe deeper than normal, but you're not out of breath. And if you pay attention, you'll notice a distinct sensation. Your body warms up gently, but you're not drenched in sweat. This is the zone where, inside your body, especially within your mitochondria, a crucial process is taking place. Mitochondria, the power plants of your cells, do not respond well to excessive strain. When you train too intensely, they prioritize carbohydrates because they provide quick energy, but when you maintain a moderate intensity for long enough, they shift into a different mode: burning fat. Not only burning fat, but learning to burn fat more efficiently. This is a key point many people overlook. You are not just burning fat during the workout. You are training your body to become a better fat-burning machine even when you are at rest. And this ties directly into a concept that, once understood, makes the entire fat loss process much clearer: metabolic flexibility. A metabolically flexible body can smoothly switch between using glucose and fat depending on the situation. But when you develop insulin resistance, or constantly supply your body with energy from food, your body gradually forgets how to use fat. It becomes dependent on sugar, and as a result, whenever there is excess energy, it gets stored most often around the abdominal area. Zone 2 is how you retrain your body to regain that skill. When you move at this intensity for a long enough period, your body begins to realize that it cannot rely on carbohydrates forever. It starts mobilizing fat, including visceral fat, as a fuel source. And what's interesting is that this process doesn't happen immediately. In the first few minutes, your body still uses stored glycogen. But if you maintain a steady pace, a silent shift begins to occur. Your body gradually leans toward fat. And once that shift happens, you enter a state where visceral fat becomes more accessible than ever before. This explains why many people walk every day but see no results. They either move too slowly, creating insufficient stimulus, or too fast, crossing out of zone 2 and back into burning glucose. They never truly stay in the golden zone long enough. And as a result, they never activate the mechanism they're actually looking for. A simple way to check this yourself is to try nasal breathing. If you can maintain breathing through your nose for a few minutes, but feel slightly challenged, you are very likely in the right zone. This isn't a random trick, it's a fairly accurate physiological indicator, because at that intensity, your body begins relying more on oxygen, which is essential for efficient fat burning. There's also something important you need to understand. Otherwise, you may quit too early. Visceral fat does not show immediate changes on the surface. The first changes happen internally. You may not see your waist shrinking yet, but your liver is functioning better. Your insulin is becoming more stable, and your mitochondria are becoming more efficient. These are changes you can't see in the mirror, but they are the foundation for everything you will see later. Many people stop in the second or third week because they think nothing is happening. But if you understand the mechanism, you'll realize this is actually the most critical phase, the phase where your body is being reprogrammed. And once you move past that stage, things begin to change, not dramatically, but steadily and sustainably. And that is the difference between losing weight quickly and truly transforming your metabolic system. At this point, there is one crucial truth that, if you don't fully understand it, can easily lead you into the biggest trap that causes most people to fail. Your body does not switch to fat burning the moment you start moving. This is why so many people say, "I walk every day, but nothing changes," because they have never truly gone long enough or correctly enough to reach that critical transition point. In the first minutes, your body almost always uses glycogen, the stored carbohydrate energy in your muscles and liver. This is completely normal and even necessary because it is a fast and accessible energy source. But if you stop too early or constantly change your pace, you will never pass through the metabolic doorway where your body begins to shift toward fat burning. Think of this process like starting a system. In the first few minutes, you are warming it up. If you shut it down halfway, it never truly operates at its intended function. But if you maintain a steady pace, not too fast, not too slow, a quiet transformation begins. The demand for carbohydrates gradually decreases, and your body is forced to find a more sustainable fuel source. That's when fat, especially visceral fat, begins to be mobilized. And interestingly, because visceral fat is located close to the liver, under the right metabolic conditions, your body can break it down and use it more efficiently than subcutaneous fat. This is why Zone 2 is not just a training trick, but a way to reset your entire internal metabolic environment. When you sustain this state long enough, you are not only burning fat in that moment, you are sending a clear signal to your body. This is the fuel we need to get better at using. And your body, which is inherently adaptive, will begin to respond to that signal. Mitochondria increase in number, fat-burning enzymes become more active, and most importantly, the time required to switch into fat-burning mode becomes shorter. In other words, if it initially takes you 15-20 minutes to reach that state, after a few weeks, your body can get there much faster. However, this is also where many people make a subtle mistake. They fail to maintain consistency. They start walking at a good pace, but then get distracted, slow down, or suddenly speed up. These small fluctuations may seem insignificant, but in reality, they continuously pull your body out of Zone 2. As a result, you might walk for 30 minutes, but only spend a few minutes truly in the effective fat-burning zone. This is why many people feel like they're doing everything right, yet see no results. A very practical way to recognize this is by paying attention to your breathing. When you're in zone 2, your breathing becomes deeper than normal, but still controlled. You can talk, but if you try to sing, it becomes difficult. And if you attempt to breathe only through your nose, it feels slightly challenging but still manageable. This is a highly reliable signal because it reflects the internal physiological state where your energy system is shifting to rely more on oxygen and fat. There's also a sensation many people overlook: a gentle warmth in the body. Not the kind of intense heat or heavy sweating, but a steady, comfortable warmth. This indicates that your body is operating in a zone where lactate, a byproduct of metabolism, remains low and stable. And that is the ideal environment for fat burning. Now, if you look deeper inside the body, you'll notice something remarkable. When you consistently maintain zone 2 over days and weeks, the mitochondria in your muscles don't just become more efficient, they actually increase in number. This is not a minor change. It's like building more energy factories within your body. And with more mitochondria, your body gains a greater ability to process fat not only during exercise, but even at rest. This explains why many people, after a period of training correctly, begin to notice a very different kind of change. They no longer experience energy crashes between meals. Previously, they might have felt hungry quickly, fatigued, or needed to snack constantly. But as the body becomes more metabolically flexible, it can easily switch to using stored fat when needed. And this not only supports fat loss, but also creates a much more stable energy state throughout the day. Another important factor you need to understand is the relationship between visceral fat and insulin resistance. These two almost feed into each other. When you have more visceral fat, your body becomes more insulin resistant. And when you are insulin resistant, your body becomes even more prone to storing visceral fat. This creates a cycle that, if not interrupted, can continue for years. But Zone 2 has a major advantage. It directly impacts both of these factors at the same time. When you move at this intensity, your muscles begin absorbing glucose from the bloodstream with less reliance on insulin. This reduces the burden on the insulin system and gradually improves insulin sensitivity. At the same time, as your body learns to burn fat more efficiently, visceral fat begins to decrease. And as visceral fat decreases, insulin sensitivity continues to improve. This creates a positive feedback loop, the exact opposite of the negative cycle you started with. There is also a small but highly effective adjustment you can apply immediately: timing your Zone 2 sessions. If you walk when your body is not in a recently fed state, for example, in the morning before breakfast or a few hours after eating, you create a condition where glycogen levels are slightly reduced. This encourages your body to switch to fat burning more quickly. You don't need prolonged fasting or extreme methods, just a reasonable window where your body is no longer flooded with incoming energy from food. However, none of this will matter if you don't maintain the most important factor: consistency. Your body does not change because of one perfect workout. It changes because of dozens, even hundreds, of repeated correct signals. This is why research often points to a very specific range, about 150 to 210 minutes per week. This is not a random number. It's the range where changes in mitochondria, insulin sensitivity, and metabolism begin to become clear and measurable. You can divide that time in a way that fits your lifestyle: 3 sessions of 50 minutes, 5 sessions of 30 minutes, or even shorter daily walks done consistently. Your body doesn't care how you split it. It only responds to the total signal you send over the course of the week. And when that signal is clear and consistent enough, your body will begin to adapt in the direction you want. This is also the point where many people start to notice the first real changes, not in the mirror, but in how they feel. Their energy becomes more stable, cravings decrease, and when they return to the same walking pace, it feels significantly easier. This isn't subjective, it's a sign that your mitochondria are working more efficiently and your body is truly changing from within. And here's something crucial. If you don't recognize it, you may sabotage your entire progress right before results begin to appear, and that is how you interpret the slowdown. Because after the first few weeks, most people go through a phase where everything seems to stall. They no longer feel the same rapid changes as in the beginning. Their weight may stop dropping, and their waistline may not shrink as quickly as expected. In that moment, they make a wrong conclusion. This method doesn't work. But if you understand the mechanism, you'll see this is not a sign of failure, it's a sign that your body has adapted and is now waiting for a new signal. The human body does not respond in a linear way. It does not lose fat day by day in a straight, predictable line. Instead, it adapts in phases. You send a signal, the body responds, and then it stabilizes. And if you continue sending the same signal without any adjustment, the body will maintain that state rather than continue changing. This is why many people feel stuck after a while, when in reality, they only need a very small adjustment. One of the simplest yet most effective adjustments is to slightly increase your total weekly volume. There's no need to overhaul your entire program or train harder. Just add one more Zone 2 session, or extend each session by 10-15 minutes. This creates a new signal that is strong enough for the body to continue adapting without disrupting the system you've already built. And this is a key principle. You don't need to do more in an extreme way, you just need to do more in a smarter way. There's also another strategy you can use to reignite fat burning. Incorporating a small amount of higher intensity into your weekly routine. But it's important to understand its role correctly. High intensity is not a replacement for Zone 2, it is a complement. Short, controlled bursts can help increase mitochondrial enzymes and improve oxygen delivery, allowing your body to return to a more efficient, fat-burning state when you go back to Zone 2. This is synergy, not substitution. However, if there is one factor that many people underestimate, it is sleep. You can do everything right in your training, but if your sleep is insufficient or poor in quality, cortisol levels will rise. And when cortisol increases, your body receives the signal to hold onto fat, especially visceral fat, as a protective mechanism. This is why some people train very hard but see slow results. It's not because they're doing things wrong, but because a critical part of the system is being overlooked. And when you begin adjusting these elements, a little more volume, a touch of intensity, better sleep, you'll notice something interesting. Progress starts to flow again. Not in an explosive way, but in a steady, consistent way. Your waistline gradually reduces. The heaviness around your abdomen fades. And more importantly, you begin to feel lighter in a very real sense, not just lighter in weight, but lighter in how your body functions. But perhaps the biggest change isn't on the scale, it's in how you experience yourself. When Zone 2 becomes part of your daily life, it is no longer a workout. It becomes a rhythm. You no longer force yourself to walk, you simply walk. You can pair it with a podcast you enjoy, familiar music, or a conversation with a close friend. And over time, your brain begins to associate this activity with ease rather than effort. This is when a true habit is formed. And when a behavior becomes a habit, it no longer depends on motivation. You don't need inspiration to do it. You just do it the same way you brush your teeth every day. This is the point many people never reach, because they approach exercise as a short-term task rather than a part of their lifestyle system. A highly effective way to build this habit is to anchor it to behaviors that already exist in your daily routine. For example, walking right after waking up, after lunch, or during the time of day when you usually feel most fatigued. When you attach Zone 2 to an existing anchor, you significantly reduce psychological resistance, because you no longer have to decide each day whether you should do it or not. The decision has already been made. And when you sustain this long enough, something very important happens. Your body not only reduces visceral fat, but also becomes more resistant to regaining it. This is a concept that is rarely discussed, yet extremely important. When your metabolic system is optimized, When your mitochondria function efficiently, and when your insulin is stable, your body no longer easily returns to a fat-storing state. You are not just losing fat, you are changing your body's set point. And that is the difference between temporary fat loss and building a sustainable foundation for health. One is short-term and easily lost. The other is a systemic change that lasts for years. And if you look back at this entire journey, you'll realize that none of the steps are overly complex. No strategy is extreme. Everything revolves around a simple principle. Send the right signal, repeat it long enough, and let your body do the rest. So if you are in a phase where nothing seems to be changing yet, remember that the most important changes often happen before you can see them. If progress feels slower, take it as a sign that your body is ready for the next step, not as a signal to stop. And if you're looking for a method that is simple yet effective, then perhaps you've already found the answer. It's not about doing more, but about doing the right things consistently. And when you reach the point where Zone 2 walking is no longer a choice, but a natural part of your life, that is when you haven't just changed your body, you've changed how your body works. And that is the real victory.